Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harrison Ma. I'm one of the investment managers here at Sharewise, and welcome to another Sharewise webinar. Today, we're fortunately joined by Black Canyon's Managing Director, Brendan Cummins. As always, at the end of Brendan's presentation, we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A questions. So by all means, if you have any questions, we encourage you to put them in the chat box below where it says Q&A. This webinar will be recorded, so if you can't watch the whole recording or the whole viewing, you can by all means look at our YouTube channel and watch the whole recording. So without further ado, Brendan, good afternoon to you.
How are you going? Apologies for the lateness of the start of the webinar. I just had a few technical problems, as you tend to do with this Zoom and stuff, but we're all good now.
Very good. Right. You'll be able to share your screen there.
So I'm just going to share the screen now. So hopefully you can see the start of the presentation.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Look, welcome everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, Harry and Sharewise, to provide a bit of an update on what Black Canyon's up to. Let's just jump right in. Just the usual information on the disclaimer, and also I'll be talking about a scoping study in here as well. So the usual cautionary statement around the scoping studies that most investors should be aware of. So Black Canyon, we're a manganese explorer and developer. We are manganese focused, and so that's it. You know, we're not really looking at the periodic table for other commodities. We're just looking for manganese. We've been really quite successful in that. In fact, Black Canyon does have the largest manganese resources in WA and the second largest in Australia. So we've really been kicking goals on that front. And recently, we've also announced a new discovery at a project called Wandanya, which I'll go to in the presentation as well, which is really exciting. We've been able to delineate high grades in this new discovery. So it's one of those ones where hopefully it could evolve into something quite substantial. So in terms of product suite, Black Canyon, we've been looking at producing a manganese concentrate for the steel industry, but also downstream processing for high purity manganese sulfate. And we have been able to produce battery grade high purity manganese sulfate from our products. And recently, we announced a scoping study on the KR1, KR2 deposits, and the numbers and the metrics on those are extremely positive, and we'll go into those in a bit more detail as we progress through the slideshow. So in terms of Black Canyon, we listed on the ASX in May 2021. Hopefully you can still see the slideshow there. So, yeah, good.
Yeah.
We're a really modest market cap, sort of around that $5 to $6 million range currently. I mean, juniors have been affected more recently, I guess, with the investors' real lack of interest in the more junior end of town. But I think what it comes down to really is ensuring that you've got the asset base and you're doing the right thing, you're doing the work on the ground, you're making progress as cheaply and as efficiently as you can. So very modest market cap, very tight capital structure, 80 million shares on issue or 82 million shares on issue. Importantly, board and management, we have about 9% of the company. We've got some small cap instos in there. You might have heard of Lowell Fund, they're a holder, and also Cranport out of Sydney are also a holder. The top 20 have about 47% of the company, so very, very tightly held. In terms of the board structure, Graham Asco, Simon Taylor, geologists like myself, been in the business for decades, multi-decades, I guess, and also looking at, in terms of corporate compliance, Adrian Hill, based out of Melbourne, is also invaluable on our board. So we are a very technical board, which is appropriate, I guess, for this stage of exploration and resource development that we're in with Black Canyon. So for those of you who aren't familiar with manganese, there's just a couple of fundamentals that I'll really just run through quickly, just so you get a bit more of a picture. So what is manganese used for? It's mostly used in the steel industry. 90% of manganese mined and converted to alloys then goes into the steel industry. There's about 60 million tonnes of ore traded globally of manganese ore, and those grade ranges can go from 15% up to 45% manganese. So a huge grade range. It's not like iron ore, which is quite specific. A 58 or a 62. Manganese can be a very wide variety of grade ranges. And that equates to about 20 million tonnes of contained metal. So if you look at the crude steel production annually, it's roughly 2 billion tonnes of crude steel production. More than half of that comes out of China. Every tonne of steel needs about 10 kilo of manganese. So you're looking at around 20 million tonnes of manganese required on an annual basis. And that's where Black Canyon will look to produce our concentrates and feed them into that large market. So in terms of where manganese production currently comes from, it's really dominated by South Africa, the Kalahari manganese field, magnificent containment of manganese. That's followed by Gabon, which is West Africa. They've got some very high-grade ores. Australia comes in third, and our current producing mines, Woody Woody and E25 as well, is looking at getting back into production. And Groote Eylandt, which is currently on care, well, it's actually suspended at the moment since they had a weather event in March last year, and that really affected their ability to export ore. So, and then after that, you're looking at China, Ghana, and Brazil as well. So the beauty about Australia is that we're very close to the Asian markets, which would include China, Southeast Asia, but also India. So we do have a logistics advantage in Australia as opposed to coming from South Africa or Gabon on the other side of Africa as well. In terms of global manganese production grades, one of the questions I often get is, well, where's your grade profile? And we're looking at producing a 30 to 33% manganese product. So that falls within the largest grade range, which is 30 to 40%, the mid-range material, which is heavily dominated by the Kalahari as well. So you can see the grade ranges. There's still a fair bit of high grade material produced out of Woody Woody and Groote Eylandt when it gets back in operation, and also Gabon, but a fair chunk of it does come from the Kalahari at that mid grade range. In terms of ore utilisation, the silico manganese alloy is dominantly where most manganese goes into. And one of the benefits of Black Canyon's ore is that we do have high silica content. So at the smelter, they don't need to add in additional quartz. Our material already has that built in. It's also the largest market for manganese, which is also, that's something that you want to capture. Manganese is also critical. So you will find it in all of the electric vehicle batteries, the NMC batteries. It can have between 10 and 60% manganese content. But there's also the evolving batteries, the lithium iron phosphate manganese batteries, LFMP batteries, the high lithiate manganese batteries, but also sodium-based chemistries will have a high proportion of manganese. So, which is great for manganese. It doesn't seem to matter what battery, what battery pathway car manufacturers will go down. They are going to have a portion of manganese in it, so that's good. It is a small market currently, probably 200 to 300,000 tonnes of manganese sulfate required every year to go into that at this stage. But the forecast is that should grow to a million tonnes by 2030, which is approaching rapidly. But what is really significant about high purity manganese sulfate, and like a lot of other battery inputs, is that they're dominated by China. So there is quite a push, I guess, out of the US and Europe to really diversify that supply chain. You can see where most of the mining of manganese comes from other countries, and then you've got the processing of it dominated by China, the cathode production dominated by China, and the cell manufacturing dominated by China. So in many respects, the US, through its IRA, is looking to, I guess, try to catch up, to some extent. And the Europeans are also keen to ensure that they've got diversity of supply, so they're not reliant on one source of supply for a variety of these battery minerals. And with the way battery chemistry is evolving, it really is moving more towards more widely available elements such as manganese, and that's why sodium is also getting a bit more traction, and they're cheaper. Comparing manganese to nickel and cobalt, it is quite a bit more cheaper. So that's really where the chemistry for these batteries will be heading to in the long term. So Black Canyon, since listing in May 2021, we have been a growth story. When we IPO'd, we had no resources, and I'm a geologist, so I was pretty keen to get out there in the field, and we probably spent about 6 months reviewing all the projects and really trying to figure out, which ones we should target first. And one of our joint venture tenements, actually at Flanagan Bore, did turn out to be that low-hanging fruit. There was abundant manganese mineralisation at surface. That always gets geologists excited when you can see quite high degree of evidence of manganese mineralisation. And in 2022, at the end of 2022, we completed our first drill programs across the Flanagan Bore projects, 170 million tonnes at 10.3% off the bat. So that was a fantastic outcome. Last year, we looked at across our other tenement positions, and in that time, we added another 140 million tonnes to get up to 314 million tonnes at 10.5% manganese. So that was another great result. So this year, what we've done is looked at, we didn't quite have enough, I guess, in the budget to completely drill out all of our exploration targets that we had at the time. So we've sort of stopped at the mineral resources for some of those targets, which are actually open. And we also generate an exploration target, which is another 160 to 215 million tonnes at between 11 and 12% manganese. So all up, we do have a lot of manganese at around that 10 to 12% manganese grade. At KR1 and KR2, we recently finished a scoping study, which we'll go through in the next few slides as well. But that confirmed positive metrics of around NPV around $340 million and an IRR of 70%. So great outcome. This year as well, we put our first drill holes into the Wandanya project, and very pleasantly surprised that we are achieving some very solid mineralisation out of that as well, which we'll go through shortly. For the rest of this year, really, we're looking at doing a bit more on the feasibility work. Love to do a bit more work on Wandanya as well. I think that's showing a lot of promise. And also high-purity manganese sulfate. Where would we locate a processing facility, ideally in Australia, but we are looking at options. So in terms of Black Canyon, where we're located, hopefully you can see on the slide, we're up here in the Pilbara. To the west of us are all the iron ore mines, the big four: Rio Tinto, FMG, BHP, and Hancock Prospecting, all got their iron ore mines in through there. This area to the east is really a manganese belt. We've got a large portion of ground in here, and this is at the Balfour Manganese Field, and that's where we've delineated 314 million tonnes of resource through here. Wandanya, which I'll be speaking about later, is located here. It's about 80 kilometres south of Woody Woody, which is an operating manganese mine. It's been going since the 60s. Big Tree is one of our joint venture tenements. There's also quite a lot of evidence of manganese, of hydrothermal style manganese in that area as well. So Balfour Manganese Field, it's a very large manganese field. We've discovered and drilled out 8 mineral resources in there. The total resource is 340 million tonnes, as I mentioned. The beauty about having scale is that it does lend itself to multiple development options, and that's something that we'll be looking through as we work through feasibility as well. But then the exploration potential at Wandanya. Any ore that we produce will be trucked along this track through here, head up through Port Hedland. We're really fortunate that the Pilbara, in terms of infrastructure development over the last couple of decades, has really gone leaps and bounds. In terms of sealed road that we'll be able to access for our trucking and haulage, the road is sealed from Port Hedland down to the Osky Roadhouse. It's also sealed from Osky Roadhouse to Gadari, which is about halfway. It's unsealed through there. It's sealed down on that section, but then unsealed across here through the project. So more than half of the actual haulage road is sealed, which is fantastic outcome. Let's jump right into the KR1, KR2 scoping study results. The beauty of these deposits is they're very large, so it does lend itself to a long mine life. The other factor with manganese is that it's very simple mining, processing, and it's really mine it, wash it, crush it, put it through some beneficiation. So we're looking at dense media separation as the most effective means to do that. So we can upgrade it from around 10% to that 30 to 33%, and then putting on a truck and sending it out to port. and then it goes on a boat to market. So a 16-year mine life for our project. We've only looked at 2 of the resources. The mine life could definitely extend, or we look at increasing throughput. And that's some of the advantages of scale. It does give you a lot of options. CapEx is really quite low because it is a simple processing plant. So we're looking at about $84 million to build that. In terms of key metrics, the NPV of $340 million and IRR of 7% is, that's really outstanding for a small company to be able to hang our hat on a project like this. You can see the layout, proposed layout for the projects. We've got mining of KR1 through here, starter pits down in the south, and then also accessing KR2 along here. It's about 10 kilometres from KR2 across to KR1. And then really putting onto the pad, crushing, processing, haulage, and then send it out to port. I guess the key takeaways as well from the tabulations here is our operating cost and our margin. So we're looking at all-in sustaining costs around $166 Australian, and then our average sale price around $227. So a pretty healthy margin, $60 a tonne Australian, based on the scoping study that we've completed. So we're really happy with that outcome, but there's always more you can do. So in terms of project enhancements going forward, we're looking at probably 4 main pillars that we would target to reduce our operating costs. And mining's really obvious. In the scoping study, we use conventional. There's no blasting required. It's all very soft ore, so we just use conventional shovel truck type thing. But we're very keen to look at the surface miners because the material is quite soft, and we think there could be some significant cost savings in using surface miners. Processing as well, looking at metallurgical optimization. How can we increase the grade of the product? So we're quite confident we can reduce that 30 to 33% grade using DMS. But can we also squeeze a bit more out of it and head towards more the 35-36% manganese? And some of the last test work we did put out recently, we did achieve a 35% grade from using dense media separation. Haulage as well, we used a very conventional contract haulage arrangement, but we really like the idea of being able to reduce our haulage costs, which are more than half of our OPEX, by going more towards owner-operator or some other arrangement with a haulage contractor. So there's some significant savings to be had around the haulage as well. Project scale, as I pointed out, do we increase the mine life at the same throughput, or do we look at having a higher mining rate but increasing throughput? So there's a number of ways we can look at the operations. And what we did learn from this last scoping study is that obviously lower strip ratio has lower mining costs, and that really lends itself to improving your cash flow. So we do have other outcropping manganese mineralization at surface. So, theoretically, we could look at accessing a lot more of our deposits in a hub and spoke style arrangement and reduce our stripping ratio, which improves our costs as well. You'll notice on the graph through here, annual cash flow of around $46 million per annum based on the scoping study. There's a bit of a lull around year 4 and 5, and that's because we're waiting to get into KR2, which is year 6 and 7 out through there. So, and the reason why that happened is KR2 was actually inferred, so we didn't want to use it in the first 5 years of our scoping study. But we've recently completed an infill drill program at KR2, so we'll be able to move this material forward in an updated scoping study. So we'll remove this valley in through here and try to equalise our cash flow, particularly in that crucial first 5 years. So next steps for the project, really more metallurgical test work. I need to go drill some diamond core. We've got a fairly well-developed flow sheet now, but now we need to actually do more test work on that with larger scale, larger size samples, and then also look at the variability across the deposits, which is really important. Understanding the geometallurgical characteristics of these deposits is hugely important to ensuring that you do get the target grades and get the right recoveries. Also work through feasibility work. We've already done 12 months of environmental baseline studying on site for flora, fauna, which are the key elements of what we need to move it through the approval and permitting process, and progressing offtake discussions as well. With a company like Black Canyon, we're very keen to talk to potential partners who are interested in working with us, to help develop these projects as well. As a $5 million market cap, we've got to be realistic about the ability to fund the construction of a project of this size. So we have done work on the downstream high purity manganese sulfate test programs. We've sort of staged it, and we've done it over the last few years. Firstly, ensuring that the actual ore could produce high purity manganese sulfate. That was year one. We managed to produce the crystals in 2022. They weren't battery grade, but it did give us a lot of insight into how to generate battery grade manganese sulfate. So we went back again in 2023 and did more work, multi-stage purification, removing a lot more of these other deleterious elements. And we did achieve battery grade manganese sulfate in 2023. So that was a tremendous milestone for the company. And so again, this year we're looking at increasing the scale of that test work. And we've recently processed about 400 kilos of material to make sure that we can get enough ore from site, from KR1 and KR2, to run through larger scale flow sheets. And we'd really like to head towards piloting at some point as well. Now, just sort of switching out to some of the exploration upside at Wandanya. I was on the rig probably about a month ago, and we put our first holes into Wandanya. It's always exciting as a geologist to put the first holes in there, and I was really pleasantly surprised to see the results on that eastern boundary of the drilling, and with very consistent mineralisation. And what I really like about it is, we got surface mineralisation there at about 50%. And often what happens with manganese, you do get a surface enrichment. But then when actually did the drilling, we did get at least a couple of intersections above 50% as well. So that sort of verifies the high-grade mineralisation surface. So we can tick that box. We're only located 80 kilometres south of Woody Woody. And there's been no exploration in this area for manganese in the past. So I do see it as a great opportunity for Black Canyon to, we're looking at a new style of mineralisation to hopefully discover something, meaningful and significant for the company. You can see on the map, we've only just drilled the W2 prospect through here. We've drilled across this area through there, but we've also got multiple high-grade intersects for the next 1.7 kilometres to the north as well. Beyond that as well, I haven't even mapped up further beyond there to the north again. So, Google Earth does suggest that there could be some more manganese kicking around there. So, very positive on, on the potential of what we've got there at the W2 prospect. So some of the information that we released today and a part of our ASX release, you can see the intersects, very consistent mineralisation on this eastern boundary. What I did during the sampling project is that we actually put out some portable XRF results. I think it was last week, and we sampled just every second line across there, just to see what the grade variation might be through there. And again, as a geologist, I really wanted to, satisfy myself that what I was seeing at the drill rig was translating into good grades and thicknesses. And you can see the results. It's very consistent mineralisation across that 240 metre strike, which is really quite surprising. And 5 metres at 33% across the majority of those holes, and then the basal 2 metres is above 40% manganese. So across all those holes as well, which is why I really like the potential of this project, because we're getting these high grade intersects in a strata bound target. So it does give us, I think it gives us the ability to be more effective in our targeting as we chase this to the east and then to the north as well. So there is upside potential, as I was saying, and there may be multiple reactive layers through the profile as well, buried beneath this, and we haven't done the drilling yet or the geophysics to see if we can delineate those. I believe it is fault related as well, so it's a little bit like the Woody Woody style of mineralisation, which is hydrothermal, which can be quite potty. Woody Woody has ore bodies the size, between 50,000 and 5 million tonnes of material. The average size is about 500,000 tonnes, related to fault structures where I think this mineralisation was related more to a particular horizon, like a coal seam. There may be multiple horizons, but there might be further upside on fault structures feeding into those horizons as well. So let's hope. So in terms of the forward execution plan, in terms of exploration and pre-development, we're an explorer, always looking to find more manganese, and then how that fits within our grade profile. We do have 300 million tonnes at 10%. Can Wandanya also feed into that and increase our grade profile as well over time? Looking at assessing pathways, development pathways through test work and feasibility, really looking at developing a team. Very important to have social license. We've been working on our ESG as well and engaging with our stakeholders in the region, and also making sure that we're doing our environmental surveys early, certainly as early as possible to prevent delays in approvals, and a lot of engagement with strategic investors and project enablers in the projects. Also operations, looking to establish long mine lives. The potential at Wandanya, to produce a higher grade product is very attractive. All about reducing technical risk in terms of development and operations, and engaging with top tier parties. Downstream, there's always been a lot of interest in the high purity manganese sulfate. Really alternative sources beyond China, I think, are very important. And you've seen other companies go to the US, to Europe, and ideally, Black Canyon would really like to be located in Australia, where we can be more be more in control of our supply chain, and also get full access to the rebates through the IRA through the US. So hopefully that's given everyone a bit of an insight into Black Canyon. I kind of feel like it was a bit rushed, but look, really happy to take questions.
Yeah, it was perfect. Thank you, Brendan. That was very, very fascinating and insightful. As you mentioned to our attendees, if you have any questions, please, by all means, put them in the Q&A boxes below. I guess I've got a question to kick us off, just regarding, BCA's growth strategy. Obviously, you mentioned you've got the largest WA presence or deposit in terms of manganese. The chemistry of EV batteries moving towards manganese, and obviously speaking with partners, what do you think are the key growth drivers for Black Canyon, say in the coming years, and how do you plan to capitalize on them?
Yeah, so I think we're at a stage. Well, in terms of where the market is at the moment, it's a really risk-off type of market. So what we've noted is that investors want projects to be pretty much de-risked and ready for development, which puts companies like Black Canyon in a bit of a challenging spot, because we're a smaller market cap, and we do need to raise capital through the markets. And so I guess the way we see to work around that is to actually engage with the end users of these products, and that's probably going to be a key catalyst really for the company going forward. So either end users in the manganese concentrates that goes into the alloying smelters, or end users into the high purity manganese sulfate. In saying that, look, the Wandanya project is, this is the first time we've drilled it. It's our first drill program. It looks really promising. I'd like to say that should also be a key catalyst, and potentially in a better market, it probably would be reflected more so in the share price than where it is at the moment. I just see there's just so much upside up through there, and I need to do more work on the ground. We'll look at going out there and really verifying some of the other areas to the north of W2, in that 1.75 kilometres, but also further north there and to the west, because this is a flat-lying deposit. To the west, there might be some more outcrops, and particularly to the east as well. We need to go and explore that. So really, I think investors do like to see exploration success, and we see that at Wandanya.
Yeah, perfect. And I've got a question here from Nick in the chat regarding Wadania. How deep were you drilling for that project, and how much more drilling will be done on that project?
I think I'd like to do quite a lot more drilling on that project. It really is subject to funding the company and making sure that we can, you know, go forward with I guess the cost required to get to drilling. We've done quite a bit of heritage work already. I need to do a little bit more heritage work to get access to those northern targets before we can go and drill those. And the average drill depth, I think, was probably about 15 to 20 metres. They weren't particularly deep holes. We were targeting the supergene material to the west. And then as we drilled to the east, we started to get these really consistent 5-metre intersects of manganese as well. So I have really drilled everything I could drill, in terms of heritage approval areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, once I get back there and we can do another heritage survey, it'll open up all that northern area and probably looking at extending to the east as well.
Yeah.
Look, this time of year is actually fairly problematic in terms of getting back to site. We're heading towards the wet season in the Pilbara. It can be quite challenging. And even that last drill program, we just managed to finish drilling W2 W2 and KR2, and literally the next day they had 70 mils of rain, and we just got out by the skin of our teeth. So otherwise we'll probably still be stuck out there. But yeah, look, it's just really dodging the weather as well to get back out there. But don't get me wrong, I'd love to get back out there and hammering in a few more holes. And we're talking with our drilling contractor about doing more equity for drilling, which is a fairly popular model these days. It gives them exposure to the project, but it also gives us, helps us preserve some of our cash as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess regarding competitive advantage, what do you think sets Black Canyon apart from, say, the rest of the world, or even within Australia? Is it pure scale, or what do you put it down to?
Yeah, look, I think one of the advantages Australia has, and it's been recognised, globally, is its proximity to China. If you look at the iron ore industry and how Australia dominates that iron ore industry, and the volume of iron ore coming out of the Pilbara is hundreds of millions of tons of iron ore on an annual basis, feeding into the machine of China, I guess, and they're producing about 1 billion tons of iron ore a year. So I see the advantage of Australia being recognised as being a consistent, reliable supplier of materials, and that's just really riding on the coattails of companies that have come before Black Canyon. So I do see that as being quite an advantage. And also the jurisdiction of Australia, it's recognised that getting approvals and all the permitting required does take time in Australia, but once you've got them, you're locked in. And I've worked in Africa quite a bit as well, and I've seen, unfortunately, governments come and go, and they can dramatically change the outlook of investment in some of those African countries as well. So I think they are really the key benefits. And particularly up in the Pilbara, we do have a lot of advantage in terms of infrastructure. Obviously, I don't need to go into the fact that WA is a mining state. Access to people, equipment, it's really all there. It's readily available for us to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess following on from that, are there any key risks or I guess regulatory challenges associated with Black Canyon at the moment or going forward that could infiltrate or I guess change the way the company operates going forward?
I think with a lot of projects, it's really identifying those risks very early. And we've had the benefit of being able to understand a company like E25 and where they started at that Butcherbird project. And we've probably got a bit of a second mover advantage. We've seen how they had some challenges with their processing side. So they were using a technology called ore sorting, which works really well when you're dealing with like maybe a white quartz ore versus a black host rock, and so it's very effective in sorting that out. But once with this manganese hosted in shale, once you wet that material, it's various shades of brown and grey. So optical sorting is definitely more challenging, which is why we've gone for dense media separation. It's colorblind. It's really just looking at the physical property of the particles, and manganese is heavier than the gangue material. So once you put it through the DMS, you get your sink, which is the manganese product at the back end, and your float, which goes off to waste dumps. So that's like I said, I think you've really got to identify those risks really quite early. And mining is not a risk with this project. It's pretty straightforward. Processing, being able to deliver that grade profile of 30 to 33% manganese. So we're putting a lot more effort into understanding the geometallurgical properties of the deposits. We'll do a lot more test work, which is why we want to do diamond core on those projects, and then make sure we've got this flow sheet really nutted out to ensure that we can produce the product. But in terms of understanding the cost as well of haulage, and that's a significant part of our OPEX. So looking at reducing our haulage costs any way we can. And we did that through the scoping study as well, just looking at larger trucks. Very simple changeover. Looking at larger trucks actually makes has a significant effect on our OPEX.
Yeah. And then I guess last question before we wrap up is on innovation. And I guess you touched on surface miners in terms of cost efficiency. What other technical advancements or ESG initiatives do you have in place to, I guess, push innovation with Black Canyon?
I think, particularly with the high purity manganese sulfate, I think we would ideally like to be located in Australia, and understanding your energy costs really important. And access to ports. So we've looked at locations in Australia. We looked at WA, Queensland, Tasmania as well. So I think we'd like to be quite innovative in where we could locate a processing facility within Australia, which is probably being overlooked. Particularly with the IRA. We're a free trade agreement country with the US. We don't need to be in the US, and there may be some advantages in being there, but there might also be some advantages in being in Australia. I'm not sure whether there's any more cost advantages in terms of capex and being either in the US or Australia. So that's what we'd like to, I guess, progress. And then also with our processing, whilst dense media separation is used quite widely in the manganese sector and the iron ore sector, applying it to the manganese-hosted shales, of which there are significant resources in the Pilbara, and applying it successfully really does open up scope for Australia to produce a lot more manganese to feed into the market. So it's not like it's cutting-edge technology, but it's proving that it can work really effectively on manganese-hosted shale. I think will be great for WA and good for the export market in Australia.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for attending today and being present in your presentation, and thanks to our attendees as well. And if there were any points of interest that you'd like to rewatch, as I mentioned at the start, this webinar is recorded, so it's on our YouTube channel. But yeah, fantastic webinar, and we hope to have you on again soon.
I appreciate your time, and if there are any other interested investors who want to reach out to me directly, my contact details are on any of those ASX releases, so feel free. I'm very accessible and always happy to chat about manganese.
Perfect. Thanks, Brendan. Cheers.
See ya. Bye.